So today we're going to be talking about Standard 5.3, the American Empire, and this particular section of Standard 5 is about how once we get a taste of growing an empire like we did down in Cuba after the Spanish-American War, we kind of like it, and we're going to seek to expand even further. Now we're going to start a little bit with Cuba. When we finish the Spanish-American War, we tell the Cubans, yes, you're free, you're independent, you can have your own government, everything's great. But then we're going to force on them this thing called the Platt Amendment. The Platt Amendment says that we are going to supervise Cuba. And what that means is, Cuba, you can pass whatever laws you want to, but we have to approve them. So if you want to pass a tariff on American imported goods, sorry, we can't let you do that. So even though, yes, they're free, they're not really free. We still have oversight over them. In addition, we tell them in the Platt Amendment that we are going to take a little chunk of land in Cuba called Guantanamo Bay, and we're going to use it as a naval base. If you remember Alfred Thayer Mahan, he says that the way that we would get powerful in the late 1800s, early 1900s, was to build up our navy. And to do that, we need a number of ports around the world. And so we say, we're going to take that and we're going to use it as a port. Now, this picture may not make a lot of sense unless you're familiar with Guantanamo Bay, because we've used that to interrogate prisoners taken primarily in Iraq and Afghanistan that we think might have information about terrorism in some way. I think that Bush, Obama, and Trump have all talked about shutting down Guantanamo Bay, but none of them have actually done it. So at this point, it's still occasionally used for interrogations. So we like this idea of controlling more of our hemisphere. So we start looking around at the map and we say, you know what, there's an opportunity here. You see, it used to take a long time to sail around South America. I mean, like a very long time, weeks. And so we're looking at the map and we say, we have a pretty smart Army Corps of Engineers. We could probably dig a canal across this little area right here that's called the Isthmus of Panama. Now, the Isthmus of Panama today is controlled by Panama, but back then it was controlled by Colombia. So we go to Colombia and we say, would you give us some control over the Isthmus of Panama, enough that we can dig this canal? And they say, no, we saw how you got involved and helped Cuba. We don't really want you doing that here. So we go to Panama and we say, hey, we hear that you guys are interested in your independence. We would like to support you in this, and in fact, we'd like to send some gunboats off the coast of Panama and Colombia. That might just encourage the Colombians to see things your way. So we send the gunboats down to support the Panamanian revolt, and sure enough, the Panamanians end up winning their independence. So Panama becomes a country separate from Colombia. So we go to Panama and we're like, hey, guys, we're really happy to help you out. So you think we can have permission to build a canal across Panama? And of course, we just helped them out. They're going to do that. So we do go ahead and build the Panama Canal, which is going to allow us to not have to go all the way around South America. We can just go instead of all the way around. Now, there are a couple of effects of this. One is obviously it hurts our relationship with Colombia. Colombia is not really happy about the fact that we forced our way into Central and South America. It does give us a presence in South America because we build the canal and then we park there for like 100 years. We largely control that zone and are going to tax ships that come through there. I will point out in this picture, this is not the entire canal. This is just the entrance to the canal. The whole thing, again, is about 50 miles long, so that's something. It's pretty impressive. But because we're there for so long, at some point, Panama comes to resent us too. They're thinking, man, why are you in our land taking money for these ships? I mean, yeah, you built it, but it's our land. And so we're getting our way, but not everybody loves what we're doing. So shifting gears a little bit, we've talked about the Monroe Doctrine in the past. And the Monroe Doctrine, just by way of reminder, is when we tell Europe, you stay over there in your half of the world, don't come over here, don't colonize the West anymore. And for about 60 years now, at this point in history, the Monroe Doctrine has kind of been the way things have been done. But now it's the early 1900s, and Teddy Roosevelt is president. And Teddy Roosevelt says, you know what, if we want to be powerful, we're going to have to step up with this. You see, England had been helping us enforce the Monroe Doctrine up to this point. And so now we're going to say, England, thanks, but no thanks. We don't want you over here. We are going to assert our power and our dominance in the Western Hemisphere. So Roosevelt says we are going to act as a policeman for the West. If anybody tries to come over here, it's going to be our Navy that stops them. We call this the Roosevelt Corollary. Now this goes right along with the philosophy that Roosevelt had, which he calls it big stick diplomacy. In Roosevelt's big stick diplomacy, he says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be super nice. We're going to be super kind. We're going to be respectful of everyone. But we are going to have the biggest, strongest military, the biggest, strongest Navy that anybody knows. So everybody knows that, yeah, they're super nice, but if you mess with them, they're going to mess with you, and you're going to lose. So this is his famous quotation is, speak softly and carry a big stick. Okay? In other words, if you're quiet, but you have a stick behind you, everyone's going to be afraid to mess with you, and they won't. The way that this actually works out is that there are all these Central American countries that owe some money to Europe, and Europe has to keep sending ships over to Central America to collect, and then they bring the money back to Europe. And Teddy Roosevelt says that's kind of a violation of the Monroe Doctrine. Why don't we send our own warships to Central America? We will collect the money, and we will bring it back to Europe. See, we're helping you. We're getting your money for you. You don't have to come over here. We're going to make this happen. But the fact that it's being dropped off by a warship by itself sends a message. And part of that message is we can even spare warships to deliver money because we have so many warships, right? So if you mess with us, you're probably bringing on more hurt than you would anticipate. So this really keeps Europe from invading into the Western Hemisphere, and it grows the power that we have. But Roosevelt says, that's not enough. He says we've got to go further to communicate the power that we have. And so he builds a number of new ships, he retrofits the old ones, and he paints them all bright white, and he sends them on a trip to circumnavigate the globe, okay? So what he's doing here is he's stopping the ships at many major ports in Asia, in Africa, and Europe, because he wants everybody to see how powerful our Navy is. So again, if you want to mess with us, not a good idea, okay? We can mess right back, and you're going to regret your choice. So the Great White Fleet is largely there just to show off American naval power. Not everybody loves this. Excuse me. Not everybody loves this. So this cartoon shows Teddy Roosevelt at a hat store. We've got the U.S. Grant-style hat. We've got Abraham Lincoln's hat. We've got George Washington's hat. But he's not interested in that. He's interested in the crown, right? The imperialist hat. They're saying it's an imported hat, all the style in Europe, and he says, I rather like that imported affair. The criticism is this idea of, trying to be big and scary and have people not mess with you. That's not a very American idea. So he has his fair share of critics. Now, even after he's no longer president anymore, he's still going to have some influence, and his ideas have some influence over some of the other presidents. So we have President Taft, who you can see they showed here as Teddy Roosevelt is I guess this is like Mary Had a Little Lamb, and the sheep has TR, which stands for Teddy Roosevelt. This is Taft here. The idea is that he's sort of just following Teddy Roosevelt. Taft has this idea called dollar diplomacy. He specifically wants to focus in Latin America. He wants to increase American investments in Latin America. He says, all right, everybody invest your money there. And I know that there's some fear because Latin America wasn't totally stable then. So he basically says, if you're worried that there are going to be rebellions and uprisings, don't worry. We will intervene. We'll send our military there if we need to. And so people feel a degree of confidence. Because of this, people are starting to put a whole lot more money in Latin America. Businesses are being started and expanded down there. And as a result, we get more control over Latin America. So we call that dollar diplomacy. Woodrow Wilson comes after him, and Woodrow Wilson says, well, yeah, we've got to exert our power over South and Central America, but we even need to make sure we have some power over Mexico. And he's upset because Mexico doesn't want to make trade deals with us. So Woodrow Wilson suggests this idea called moral diplomacy, which says we're going to teach the Mexicans to elect good men. Now, these good men, in his mind, are people that support America and American business. Okay, I mean, he's trying to meddle with their political process to some degree, which is usually not smiled upon by other leaders, but that's what he does. So we have big stick diplomacy, we have dollar diplomacy, and now we have moral diplomacy to add to it. So yeah, we are more involved in our half of the world, but it kind of ticks off all of our neighbors. But on the other hand, we're considered to be a world power now, which at the time we thought was a worthwhile trade-off. Now there's one more place we need to talk about, and that's China and how we're going to get involved in China. Because China for centuries now has been a place people wanted to go. Ever since people were trying to get spices and silk from it, we've realized there are goods there that can't be found anywhere else. So at the time, late 1800s, early 1900s, China didn't let just anybody come into China and trade. They had what we call spheres of influence. And by that what we mean is there are certain areas where countries could trade. So you see this map here, the orange is where Britain could trade, the purple is where Japan could trade, the green is Germany, the red is Russia, the yellow is France. Now you may realize the United States doesn't have a sphere of influence. And because we're trying to grow our influence in this way, we don't like that. So we suggested China, why don't you have an open door policy where every country can trade equally? Now, we say that's kind of a big deal because, again, if you look back here, we say, look, these countries, they might just try to colonize you. They might just try to take these territories over. So why don't you say everybody can go everywhere? You're going to have more foreigners. Nobody's laying a specific claim to your regions. It's perfect, right? Anybody can come in, and so you don't have to worry about them trying to take you over. And China's like, yeah, that makes sense. But ultimately, we're looking out for us, not for China. There's a political cartoon showing that they're about to carve up China, and we're standing on the map like, nope, we're not going to do that. We have a treaty that we like. Britain likes this idea. They don't want other countries to carve up China. They actually think that they have enough power there that they can expand their trading in China. They've actually been on our side about a lot of foreign policy affairs going back to the Monroe Doctrine. So here you have Uncle Sam, and you have England, and you have, Peter Pan, pulling together against those who wanted to go back to the spheres of influence. In the short term, it works. But in the long term, the Chinese start to really resent these merchants and missionaries who come along who are telling them what to do. Now, not all Chinese resent the missionaries and the merchants, but some don't like the fact that this symbolizes a change in the Chinese way of life. You have all these Westerners coming in saying, worship like this, and dress like this, and eat this. They say, we don't want you changing our culture, get out. So you have a group called the Boxers. Actually, let me check one thing super quick. So there's actually a number of names that this group takes on. Sometimes it's the Boxers, there's the Militia United in Righteousness, there's the Brotherhood of the Fist or something. There are all kinds of things. In English, we tend to call them the Boxers. This is a group of people who believes that they cannot be hurt by bullets, which isn't true. And they also hate Westerners. And so they start to move through China, rounding up missionaries, rounding up merchants, and killing them. China doesn't take an active role in stopping them, which, of course, really upsets us. So we take a lead role in putting them down. Now, we win, but the Chinese are alienated. We actually send the Marines in and an international coalition to China to kill Chinese people. Yes, they're killing us, but still, can you imagine another country invading the United States because they don't like something that's happening? That's kind of a scary prospect, but that's exactly what happened. So again, you can see an example of how we are kind of busting in there, and maybe we're not, we're new to imperialism, so maybe we're not being as gracious and hospitable. I don't know if hospitable is the right word. Not being as understanding of other cultures as possibly we could be. That's actually it for Standard 5.3. If you have any questions, please contact me. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you in class next time.